Hi everybody, it's Annette from the Art of Intuition, and today we are going to delve into activating higher timelines and how you do that. Now, I just watched the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which talks about multidimensionality. And there were certain parts of it that I thought were kind of interesting that we could kind of pull apart and talk about into how I incorporate multidimensionality and how I live multidimensionality. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and what I thought the movie did a good job showing. And the first thing I noticed was right before, now how I utilize multidimensionality and how they do in the movie, it's kind of interesting because for me, I'll always see different timelines in the dream state first. And that's how it's always started with me, right? Go in the dream state, you see the timelines you want, and you just pull them here. And in a sense, you kind of anchor them here. And you're not transferring just like you don't jump there, but I say that you don't jump there. In your dream state, you do jump there, in a sense. You tune into that frequency of that timeline because it's an option for you. And you find you see different ones as you kind of expand out your consciousness and as you continue your journey. And as you get bigger and bigger and bigger energetically, you're able to see more and anchor in more. So for me, I'll see it and then you sort of anchor it in. And the same thing when you look at higher aspects of yourself and you kind of see different aspects of yourself, you kind of embody them in. But it's not so much just the skill set. It's like the whole thing. You bring the whole thing down once your body, your current body, reaches that frequency. So that's kind of an interesting, I guess, dichotomy of what I noticed in that. But I also thought it was interesting how you had to do something to initiate the timeline. And they call it a jumping. You're just basically taking the skills and you're going to use them in something else. So you're initiating the timeline. And you have to do the same thing here. You have to initiate those timelines. And you do have to do weird shit, which I thought was kind of funny. Now, they kind of had to do one thing and they had to do some bizarre thing and that initiated the timeline. Like drink orange soda or just weird shit. But we kind of have to do the same thing. You have to do some weird stuff. And I'm going to just say it's weird stuff because it's not linear stuff. It's not what you would think would directly bring you to the timeline you see and the timeline you want. It's something else. Because multidimensionality is not a linear progression. It's not a logical progression. It's a frequency progression. So the trick is to get your frequency to a certain place to get to the timeline. That's kind of the key to kind of anchoring in different realities. You have to get your frequency to that timeline. And to get your frequency to that timeline, it's not what you would think it would have to be. So a lot of times you might think, okay, I have to, if I want to write a book, if that's the timeline you see and that's what you want to do, then I've got to start writing the book. Even if you really don't even know what you're supposed to write about yet. You don't even have that, you haven't even hit the frequency where the idea is yet. You just know that's what you want to do. You feel like you have a knowing of you're going there, you just don't know how you're going to get there yet. So you have this idea of this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, but I don't know what I'm going to do to get there. How am I going to get there? How is that actually going to anchor in for me? And you'll feel certain things you're supposed to do. And that's when we really have to get into kind of looking at our matrix and looking what's being pointed out to us, asking, what do I have to do to bring in this timeline that's bringing that timeline I saw? What do I have to do that? And it's all going to be about your frequency. So if you have a fear of doing something, you're going to have to bust through that fear to clear the fear from your body, raise your frequency. If you feel the need to get outside more, outside raises your frequency. Sleep raises your frequency. Getting a lot of crap out of your life. That is pulling your frequency down, or I don't know if pulling your frequency down might not be. It's keeping you in a lower frequency because of the timeline itself is a lower frequency. And as long as you play in that timeline, we're playing in that frequency. And to get to the next one, we have to pull out of that, which means we have to rearrange stuff. We have to get rid of stuff. And you kind of know what you have to get rid of. It's kind of like when you go into soul embodiment, when you start embodying in the higher aspects. You embody in the aspect, but then you have to work through everything that's not that energy, not that aspect. And if you're going to embody in, like, let's say you're going to work on, God energy, and you're going to try to embody that in, when you're embodying that in, anywhere you're not being the source creator of your life is going to come up for you to clear that stuff. That's why it can take years to actually embody in an aspect, because you have to clear everything that's not that, the distorted parts of that aspect. So to kind of purify it into one where you can kind of hold the whole thing. So it's kind of interesting how different, sort of different things. It's funny to say, it's like, oh, this is one version of it, and then I can look at how my version of it is, and it has a lot of similarities. You also saw what happened when she tried to do it all at once. And this kind of goes into why this process can feel like it takes a long time. When you're talking about anchoring in a new reality, anchoring in embodying a new aspect, why does it take 2 years to anchor a new aspect, to completely purify that aspect? And so then why does it start later on? It's quicker to do it. It doesn't take as long anymore because you don't have as much resistance to it. You don't have enough that much to clear to get that aspect embodied in. So it does kind of start to speed up as you go. I feel like it does. But in the beginning, it can take a while because you kind of starting at like a 0 point where you have so much you have to kind of work through, and so much you have to kind of pull through to get to that place where you can kind of embody in that aspect of yourself you're trying to embody in, and creating these realities because you have so much stuff in the way. Because in the movie, she kept kind of going back and forth. Like she couldn't kind of plant into one. She was kind of fractured all over the place. Where it's a little bit different how I look at multidimensionality, where you're fractured, but you're trying to merge it all together. It seemed like in the movie they was kind of staying fractured a bit, and in my interpretation, you're kind of trying to bring everything together. And in the end, she did kind of get everything together, but you could see how it was taking a toll on her, which is the reason why our brain can't handle doing it all at one time. Our body can't handle doing it all at one time. Our body is not equipped to doing it all at one time. Our body's not supposed to do it all at one time. It's not structured to do it all at one time. Your body has to kind of morph with your ascension process, your multidimensionality kind of integration. It's not meant to do it all quick. It's not a quick process, but there are things you do to kind of get to that process, but you could see why it would be too much. Just why you can't see the whole thing in the beginning. When you start look different things you're going to do, and when you start looking at different realities you want to anchor in when you're sleeping, you start seeing different ones. You kind of tee up the reality where you can bring it in. It's close enough now where you can bring it in, and that's kind of what it always meant to me when I could see it. I'd gotten to a frequency where that frequency wasn't so off I couldn't see it anymore. So I can now bring it down. I can now anchor it in. I can now have it actually happen here if it's one I wanted to do here. And it was just sort of an interesting take on just how they brought it down. Of course, for the purpose of the movie, it's like instant and then here you are. But the things we have to do to do it, they're not logical things because these are more geometrical occurrences. It's not a logical path. It's not, I'm going to do this. I want to write a book. I'm going to sit down and start writing the book. You might not even be at the frequency yet to even conceive what it's going to look like. It might be you have to, maybe a logical thing would be, I'm going to go to a creative writing class and figure out what I want to write about. That would be a logical thing to do. Yet you might feel very strongly that you have to, go on a backpacking trip through Oregon or something. And that's more what you got to do. Or you've got to go somewhere else. You got to do something even wackier than that. You have to just go into a bookstore and ask them, hey, I'm going to write this book. Can I do a book signing here? Even though you don't have the book written yet, the book's not even out. But you have to there is a part to it where you kind of have to claim it, be it before you do it. You sort of keep putting it out and putting it out and putting it out, that this is what you're going to anchor in. This is what you're going to anchor in. You kind of have to be in the energy to fully bring it down. There is a part of that in there, but it's also busting through your fears where you feel like you can't do it. And the fear leaving the body gets rid, and any anxiety of whatever it is you have to do. Because a lot of us have very big roles here. We don't have small stuff to do. In the beginning, we do have small stuff to do. Because if we can't do the small stuff, you can kind of forget about the big stuff. The big stuff is not going to come to you as easily. It's not really, I gotta even rearrange how I said that. It's not coming at all unless you can do the small stuff. And I see so many people that are like, I don't know why none of this is happening, none of this comes, but they won't even do the small stuff. You won't even do the little things you see every day. You'll be guided every step of the way of what you're supposed to do. The issue we have as humans is we don't like what we have to do. We don't like the way it can be presented. We don't like the path. The path will not be a logical path. I'll guarantee you that one. It's not logical. These are geometric codes, how realities are built. It's not a logical pathway, and you really don't even understand in the beginning how it all fits together. But if you go back and look at it later, you're going to understand how this action created this reality. And it's going to be a bizarre thing. So if you kind of track it back to the movie and all the bizarre things they were doing to kind of jump, get this skill set, get in the next reality, it was kind of just an interesting thing, because we do have to do weird stuff we don't want to do, stuff to break through all that energy of resistance, because our human is always going to have energy of resistance because it doesn't want any of this. All of this stuff completely dismantles the human realities. It does not want that. So you're going to feel body resistance. You're going to feel resistance in everything you're doing. You're going to have other people speaking resistance back to you, in a sense, speaking your greatest fears back to you. But that's really just you doing that. So the movie's a huge activation. Even if it simplified things a little bit, I think in different places, but for the activation of what that movie is absolutely amazing. How much it can kind of get you really thinking about how many of us is all over the universe it is, how many different dimensions. And there was a line in there where she said, everything I can think of is happening. And that's exactly true. Every reality you can think of is happening, or you couldn't think of it. If you can think of it, it's happening somewhere already. It doesn't mean it'll happen here. There's a lot of different things that go into what we choose to anchor in here and what we choose not to. And if it's not aligned to the highest vibration, some things will not anchor in here once we get past certain of our distortions, once we get past certain of our clearings. Some things won't anchor in anymore because we've gone past that. We don't need it to clear anything. We don't need it to, it's not going to progress us forward in any way. So it's a reality you saw that does exist somewhere, but it kind of goes on. And you do kind of branch off. There's always going to be different things you'll see that are different than how things unfolded here, because different choices were made, different things happen, and it kind of creates a whole new timeline, a whole new reality. But bringing them in from our highest place and not from our human place. There's a bit of a disconnect nowadays with how quickly you can bring something in. Or when it's in your human, because your human wants it. Your human wants this, your human wants that. And there is still a part of what you see. Everything that you want on a soul level is what you really want. And your human's going to enjoy that stuff. It just doesn't really realize that it is. But it is because that's really what you want. That's what your soul desires, which is way stronger than what your human desires. But our human kind of mucks it all up a bit and makes us feel like it's all kind of, it's just what it wants. And how quickly you can get it. But normally what I have found, how quickly you get something, it usually to me is coming not from my highest place. Because normally the higher vibrational realities, I work on those for a while. That's not a 2 hour, it'll come to you in 2 hours or in 2 days or in 2 minutes. That's coming from a different place. The things you've been working on for a long time, or what feels like a long time to you, and it can span months, it can span years, depending on how much you're putting into it. It could span 10 years. It all is going to depend on where you are on your journey and how much you're going to put toward your journey. And that means putting everything toward it. Your money, all your energy, which is time and money. A lot of people will put the time into it, but they don't want to put their money into it. They want to put some of their money into it, but not all their money into it. They hold back on a lot of stuff because they don't want to completely give themselves over to the whole thing, because when they do, they know it's going to shift things up. And our human doesn't want to shift things up. So if you haven't seen the movie, I suggest you watch it. See what it triggers for you. See what you can remember. See what you can relate to on how you view your multidimensionality, your multidimensional processes, and keep practicing the art of intuition.